Hello, guys and gals. Eric Brzezinski, day 7, completing our first full week of our 30-day April practice plan. Today we're going to talk about pitching. Now, yesterday we talked about chipping, which again was using a little bit more of the leading edge of the club. Today, pitching uses a little bit more of the glide or the bounce. We don't really prefer the word bounce, but the sole of the club. Okay. The reason we don't prefer the word bounce and the reason we prefer the word glide is because the club will actually glide or slide along the ground for quite a long time, giving you a pretty wide margin of error for your pitch shots. Dave Wedzik and I probably would say we hit about 90% of the shots around the green with what we call a pitching motion, even if they don't look like or fly very far or they roll out or whatever. But we're using a little bit of the bounce, a little bit of the sole of the club to give us a little bit more margin of error. Chipping with the leading edge requires very precise contact. If the ball's not sitting up, it's very tough you have to be very precise with where you hit the ball when you're chipping. So we tend to like to pitch the ball or use a pitching motion, even if it's with a 9-iron or a pitching wedge, and not always necessarily a 60 like I have here in my hands today. Pitches use the bounce or the glide or the sole of the club. Setup is going to be very similar. Again, I don't like open stances. We'll talk about that later, but basically for this reason, for pitches especially, because it puts the ball back in your stance. This club is actually descending quite a bit. It's going to use more leading edge than we want. So again, generally a pretty square setup, still the weight favoring that front foot, okay? So still gripping down generally, okay? So the setup is basically the same between pitches and chips, although with a pitch, I generally don't have much shaft lean at all. It's pretty much vertical, maybe even slightly, leaning back ever so slightly. But it's definitely not leaning forward too much. If I want to hit a pitch with a shaft that leans forward so I have less loft, I generally choose a lower lofted club. Okay, so setup is about the same. The backswing is going to be a little bit different. Like a chip, we moved our arms further back and hinged a little bit this way. You can see the leading edge is toe down a little bit. Okay, with a pitch, the feeling with the right hand is often like you're dealing cards, or right, dealing out cards with your right hand. You can see this palm is palm up. So if I deal cards and go palm up, you'll see that leading edge is rolled open, and the club is kind of rolled under the plane. It feels like this to a lot of people. It's rarely ever that far under the plane. What feels like this often in the swing ends up being pretty much up the plane or barely just under it, okay? So, but it feels like that, and we want to open that up because if we take it up and out like this, we're gonna have to try to manipulate and slide that leading edge under the ball. And we don't want to do that. We want to make this as simple as possible for you. So you set up here, you roll the club under. My hands don't move generally very far, while the club head moves back pretty darn far, right? That club head has traveled 8 feet, and my hands have traveled 1.5 feet or so. Okay, so we hinge the club, we make the club head move, and our hands don't move a whole lot. The downswing is 2 parts, okay? It's a fall and a pivot. And I want you to do this as 2 drills. I want you to do these separately, okay? The first part, it's going to be weird, but trust me, we'll get there, okay? I want you to, for 2 minutes or so, I want you to hinge the club back, make sure that's in a good spot, and then just let the club fall. Just let your arms go loose and let the club just fall to the ground. I'm not like hitting it. I'm just going here and then letting it fall, okay? You don't have to let go of the club, but just relax and let it fall down. Okay, it'll fall somewhere outside of your right foot and behind you. Okay, depending on how far your backswing was. But you can check your backswing. You can see the club head move pretty far. The blade's open. It's not toe down. Just let it fall. Okay. Why? Okay. Let it fall. Do 2 or 3 minutes of that. Then what I want you to do is pair just a little pivot around that front ankle while letting the club fall. I don't want you to manipulate the club. I don't want you to throw your arms out or anything like that. I just want the club to fall down. Okay, so the club falls, but you're going to pivot. And you're going to get that. Okay, so I'm letting the club fall as I pivot through. Okay, so 2 or 3 minutes of that as well. If you have the chance to hit some foam or wiffle balls or whatever, or golf balls in your garage setup, then you can start to move on to a golf ball. But even before you hit a golf ball, feel it fall a few times. then feel it fall with a pivot. Okay, see I got a nice little net return there. We got to calibrate that better. But again, let it fall. And pivot. What you'll notice on that follow through is my arms are very soft, right? Let it fall. The softer my arms are, the higher that ball will go. I often say you could just let go of it and it would go right into the scabbard. But my arms are very soft. The softer and less type A I am with my arms, the higher and softer the ball will go. Okay? Because the club basically, you know, it's lagging pretty far behind, but it builds up a lot of speed, catches and overtakes your hands very, very quickly through impact. Okay? Why do we call this glide? Because the club, again, slides along the ground for a pretty long time. So if I sit up kind of to the middle of these balls, or even to this back ball a little bit more, okay, really it'd be a ball position about there. You can see if I do this properly, right, I can launch both balls up in the air because the club slides along the ground a pretty long time. If I can find it, I'll link to a video where we hit 6 balls actually, because the club slid along the ground for such a long time. So that's pitching, and that's day 6. Sorry, day 7, full week. I'll see you tomorrow for the start of week 2 on day 8.